Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Can everyone hear me in the back? You're good? All right. Thank you. My name is Jim Brown. I'm here with the BSD Certification Group, and our talk this afternoon is on some of the analysis of the current BSD Associate exam results. It's a certification exam that we've developed over the last several years, and we're going to talk about the certification group, the exam itself, and then some of the results. Whoops, sorry. So that's the agenda. Again, we'll talk a little bit about the group, and we're going to look at the exam results and also the scores, and then look ahead to some new exams that we have coming out, the BSD Professional exam. So the BSD Certification Group started in 2005. It started as at an after-dinner party of the New York City BSD user group. The participants felt the need, as I think many people have felt the need over the years, for a valid, psychometrically valid, robust certification program within the BSD community. After the initial startup, one of the first things we did was become a corporation. It's easier to engage with places like banks and other organizations if you're actually a corporation. So we incorporated as a nonprofit organization in the state of New Jersey in the United States. But the entire group is composed of educators, writers, system admins, BSD professionals, enthusiasts, and pretty much anyone who has an interest in BSD and wants to see a wider adoption of BSD systems in the industry. Our main goal is to make a BSD certification that's globally affordable and rigorous. That is academically rigorous in the sense of being able to be validated in a psychometric manner. And we'll talk about that in a minute. However, it's not too late to join. So we welcome anyone who has an interest in this certification effort to join us. The exam itself, again, we started in 2005. It took a couple of years to do some of the initial legwork to get things going. We launched and I'll talk about that in a minute. We launched the exam at scale in 2008. And the goals of the exam itself were to test entry-level administration skills for a BSD system administrator, that you could actually have an exam that would validate some of their knowledge. Again, psychometrically valid. A key goal was low cost. We wanted to make the exam affordable to anyone, anywhere in the world who could scrape up enough money to go ahead and apply to take the exam and hopefully pass it. We're not in the business of making money with this exam. We don't charge an exorbitant amount, but we feel that the cost that we have now is able to sustain us in the exam development and administration. And then currently the exam covers 4 major BSD projects, which I've listed here in alphabetical order. Dragonfly BSD, FreeBSD, NetBSD, and OpenBSD. There's been some additional discussion at conferences and so forth of including other BSD projects, and we're certainly open to development of those exam materials for other BSD projects if there's significant interest and a wider community with those projects. But at the moment, these 4 projects seem to incorporate most of the BSD community somewhere within these projects. The exam itself is a test for the associate exam. It's a paper and pencil test in the form that we originally put it out. The test itself is 100 questions. It's 90 minutes long, so you can't actually take a a full minute for every question, but you can scoot through most of the questions within that time period. Right now, we make it available at conferences, and we also make it available via universities, large user groups, and other organizations who can provide a quiet place for the exam and a proctor who can administer the exam and take care of the exam materials and the exam results. We looked for a partner to be able to do computer-based exams. I think you can see that that's a mouse there. And we found a partner, corporate partner, Schroeder Measurement Technologies. It's a company out of Florida in the United States. They are helping us to make the exam available online at their testing centers. They have a fairly wide presence in the United States, but they also have exam centers in Europe and South America, and also in Australia, and I believe we're talking to them about opening up a testing center here in Japan as well. In 2013, we initiated a partnership with BSD Research with Dr. Hiroki Sato, and we've been able to work with them to have the exam objectives and the exam itself available in Japanese. So we now have the ability to offer the exam with local test translation here in Japan as well. And we're also interested in partnering with anyone who has translation capabilities for the exam for other languages. So if you speak ancient Latin or some other commonly used language, please let us know. We'd be willing to talk to you about translating the exam. So the exam came from somewhere. What I wanted to do here is just give you an idea about the actual exam creation and how it was developed, because as I mentioned, one of the goals was to make it psychometrically valid. And psychometrics itself is the science of examination, and it's an education-oriented field of study where a psychometrician analyzes testing and test performance and can actually help put valid objective measurement behind an exam instead of subjective measurement. So that's the reason why we wanted to go that route. In developing the exam, we developed a job task analysis, was one of the first things we did. That analysis is a study of the commonly performed activities that a system administrator would do. What are those activities? What are the most important activities? And how frequently are those activities performed? This information is necessary to determine the actual exam objectives that would go toward the exam. We then developed those objectives and published those objectives, which you can find on the website. The website has the exam objectives for the BSD Associate exam and also the following exam that I'll discuss in a minute. We then went through a beta exam period where we had about 100 testers who took the exam at various conference venues within the 2008 time frame, 2009 time frame, something like that. And our psychometrician was able to take those results, analyze them, and help us take those results and analyze them and help set the passing score for the exam itself, so that we have the ability to, objectively measure how someone has performed on the exam. She also helps us track the results over time, and she also helps us review the exam at regular intervals. Every 2 to 3 years, we know it's necessary to review the exam objectives, the test questions that we ask, and make sure that those questions are still valid within the time frame of the systems that we're testing on. I have mentioned psychometrician before. We were partnering with Dr. Sandra Dolan. She is formerly with the Linux Professional Institute, and she's helped us develop the exam and steer the creation of the exam through the activities that we've done to date. She also does the scoring on the exam. So when you take the exam and you either you're filling out the answer sheet, or you're going online and you're taking the exam at the testing center, those results go to Dr. Dolan, and she runs the scoring metrics on it to determine your overall score. And we'll talk about scores here in just a second. This is the exam objectives document. It's available on the website. This document talks about all of the various items that have gone into the creation of the exam. The exam objectives cover these several domains of knowledge here. As a part of the job task analysis, we were able to take all of the results back from the survey that we did on the BSD community and distill down all of those results into these seven exam objective domains. So installing and upgrading the operating system, securing the operating system, file systems and disks, and the others there, user administration, network administration, and basic Unix skills. These percentages on the right are the percentage of the questions that are in the exam that are in that objective, or in that domain. So the BSD Associate exam, 11% of the exam talks about securing the operating system, and 15% talks about files and file systems and disks and so forth. So those are the relative. These are the percentages of each individual domain that's on the exam. So a candidate comes in, sits down, and takes the exam, and when the score goes to the psychometrician will score up the exam, or the results. They'll score up the results and come up with a score report, which we send a copy of the score report to each candidate. We send an email copy, and the major information on that score report is shown here. So this is actually a real score report from a candidate who took the exam. And as you can see, it shows several different pieces of information. The major domains that were in the exam are shown here. The individual candidate scores are shown here. And then for comparison purposes, you can see how your scores are aligned with several different groups. There's a group average score, so the average of the recent group of testers is shown here, and the group maximum scores are shown here. So within a recent group of attendees or test takers, someone or some number of people have actually scored 100% on this domain here. Likewise, for that domain, there has been a couple of people, maybe, hopefully not too many people, but someone at least has scored as little as 8% here in this domain. And then, so you can see how your scores are reflected within an average group of people, and both the minimum and the maximum scores. And in fact, this person did fairly well in relation to the group average. A group is just a recent group of test takers. So as people take the exam, the psychometrician has a rolling average that she keeps of a group as they go along, so that she can track over time how the group averages are changing and whether or not they're going up or down. We'll talk a little bit more about the scores over time here in a second. So here are some results from the overall group. This is I was able to collect all of the test results from our exam candidates to date. And you can see that the current pass-fail ratio is 49% of the people that take the exam have passed, and 51% of the people have failed the exam. Now, you might think this is sort of too harsh, but if you sit and consider for a minute what this means, it means that the exam is not too hard, and at the same time, it's not too easy. If it was too easy, there'd be a very large number of people passing the exam, and likewise, if it was too hard, there'd be many more people failing. So because it's right around in that middle period or that middle area, it actually indicates that the exam is showing that the candidates who actually study for the exam and are ready to take the exam, they are actually, passing the exam, and folks who just take it and think that they know a lot of stuff about BSD, and perhaps they didn't study, they may actually find that they actually fail the exam. Now, I don't mean to say that the exam is too hard for you. Your skills, your background, your experience, and how much you know of all of those BSD projects goes into your exam score. So it's likely that the folks that are attending conferences, keeping up to date with the current materials, researching BSD topics on a regular basis, they're certainly better prepared to pass the exam than someone who just takes it because they want to take a new exam. Here are some average domain scores for each of the domains that we talked about. So the overall score for the exam is in this area, and there's three exam trending lines that are shown here. We have the passing score, which is in the blue, it's on the top. The average score, obviously in the middle, and then the failing score for all of these topical areas is shown below in the red. And as you can see, if you're failing the exam, you're not even getting half of the questions correct as you take the exam. So as you're looking through these topical areas, you'll certainly want to ensure that your knowledge is better than at least half of the questions as you're taking the exam. Or I guess another way to say that is that if you're studying the exam objectives for each of these topical areas, as you're looking at the exam objectives, if you can identify that you know concretely what this material is for each objective, if you know more than 50% of them, there's a good chance that you will pass the exam. And in fact, most of the folks that pass the exam are scoring in around the 70 to 75, 80% range on the exam. Here's a look at the scores over time. This is a trend from 2009, 2010, 11, 12, and 2013, which is the last material that we have for studying the exam results. It's a little complicated to see here, but I did want to point out a couple of trends. One of the trends here is basic system administration. That's this blue line here. Starts about here. It starts here. It went down in 2010, but has rebounded in 2011, and there's some some lagging scores there on basic system administration since 2011. On the other hand, the topical area here for network administration seems to have stayed relatively constant since the initial high scoring in early 2009. I've flattened out the scores by just reducing the graph, and it's not as actually as alarming as you might think here. Most of the scores remain relatively constant over time, so we don't see that there's a gradual lowering of scores in any one particular domain. The one here, securing the operating system, does seem to have gone down slightly in 2012, but is starting to pick up again in 2013. It's a hopeful sign. We do want people to secure the operating system in every case. Here's a couple of graphs on the percent of passing scores every year. Initially, within the exam time period, when we released the exam in 2008, 2009, there were a lot of enthusiastic people that were out there studying, and they were really putting their heart into learning a lot of stuff about BSD. It seems that some of that enthusiasm has dropped off over the last couple of years. Last year in 2013, it looked like there's a little bit of a jump, so hopefully there's more enthusiasm happening in the last couple of years than there was previously. The same scores are represented almost in mirror form over here. More people seem to have failed the exam in 2013 or 2012, but then again there's a lowering of the number of people who failed the exam in 2013. So the last year or so, the last year and a half, is a positive trend, whereas the previous years seem to be a slightly negative trend. So I want to talk a little bit about exam security. One of the problems that comes up with a certification exam is that you have a great exam, you go out there, you do your best to put out a good exam, and a couple of years later you see all of your exam questions out on braindump.com or instant certification passing test.com, something like that. Exam security is a big issue. One of the best ways we can achieve exam security is to have a large pool of questions so that no one person can anticipate the next series of questions in later exams. So even if you did study at braindump.com or whatever the name is, you still wouldn't be guaranteed of having the same questions on the exam that you would take later. This slide here shows a large collection of scores over time for individual candidates. And as you can see, the distribution is fairly random. That is to say, I shouldn't say random, I should say it's distributed in such a way as that there's a constant group of people that are passing the exam, and then there's also a constant group of people that are failing the exam over time. You don't see you don't see what I'm about to show you in the next slide. So here is an example of a situation where you can almost look at the scores and see that, hey, right around this time period here, something happened, because after this time period, a lot of people started to score really well on this exam. And in fact, a psychometrician would start to look at the tests, they would start to go back and look at the exam results in this time period to see if there was a large number of similar answers on not only this exam domain, but the other exam domains as well. So by tracking the exam results, our psychometrician can tell us it looks like we might have a problem if we start seeing scores like this. Right now, our current, this slide here, the one I showed earlier, this is our actual scoring distribution. So right now, we don't have a problem, but our psychometrician will tell us in a case like this, yeah, it looks like you have a problem now, and it probably began somewhere in this time period. So she can help us determine that we need to make some changes and perhaps even identify where the exam was that had those collusion examples. Collusion for non-English speakers is a secret agreement between some people for benefit or gain of some gain that is probably illegal or immoral, or at least not in the best interest of everyone else. So the BSD Professional certification is the next certification that we're looking at in our program. We performed almost the same activities for the BSD Professional exam as we did for the Associate exam. We did a job task analysis. We did the exam objective review with the community. Our psychometrician analyzed all of the results and so forth for the requirements, and we were able to publish this document, which is the BSD Professional certification. This exam is not yet released, but I'm going to show you how it's being designed and put together. So again, from our job task analysis, the community that we looked at was very interested in these topical areas, some of them very similar to the other topical areas for the BSD Associate exam, but there are some new ones, as you can see here. Backup and restore, a very, very popular and necessary activity. Virtualization, some activity for logging and monitoring, and some exam objectives around high availability and high performance. These topic areas were of great interest to the community that took the job task analysis. And as you can see, the psychometrician has helped us identify the percentages of these topics that will be on the BSD Professional exam. The BSD Professional exam, it will have two exams. There's a written exam and a hands-on exam. The written exam will be very much like the BSD Associate exam, and the hands-on lab exam will be some activities that the candidate performs directly on some virtual machines, and then we'll be scoring those with some automated scripts with later review by a psychometrician who's missing an N. Sorry about that. And the purpose of the BSD Professional is the focus is on services that the candidate can provide by configuring the system. It's not on specific applications. So, for example, if you are asked to implement a web server as a part of the exam, the focus would be on, did you get a web server or some software that listens on the common ports, port 80, and can deliver a file. Whether you used Apache or Nginx or you know, some other software is not as important as were you able to get the job done in the time limit of the exam. So again, the focus is on what you get done, not necessarily on how you do it. We'll be launching the BSD Professional Exam in BSD Can in Ottawa, Canada. We'll have, I think right now we only have space for about 10 examinees, but I haven't reserved the room yet and all of the equipment that we need. So if we get a big surge of people who do want to take this, we'll try to make more exam opportunities available in Canada. Again, we'll have a beta period. We'll have a beta period where we have about 100 exam candidates. Then the scoring will happen very similar to what we did for the BSD Associate exam. Our psychometrician will analyze that material and help us determine how the passing score will be set. We're also interested in partnering with other organizations about setting up the lab exam. In a talk a couple of years ago, I identified the 3 or 4 different ways that we were looking at to do the exam. It looks like overall the easiest way for us to do the exam is to have a laptop or a similar machine that can boot from a dedicated disk and have the exam workstation be available on the disk. So no internet requirements, in fact, hopefully no internet at all, but no internet requirement, and all that's needed is the ability to have these machines boot from a dedicated drive. And we're looking to have folks who are interested in becoming a BSDCG testing center, you know, universities or large companies or something of that nature. We welcome involvement from the community. So here is an outline of what the BSD Professional Lab design is going to look like. These large boxes here are individual workstations. That's, you know, what's on here. We have them connected up by a switch, and each workstation itself has one or, well, most likely we'll have 3 virtual machines within each workstation. This is a previous design version here. I think I'm up to version 5, and I think we're going to have just 3 virtual machines for each workstation. The nice thing about the way we're looking to implement this now is that we'll have the virtual machines set up for all 4 projects on the same workstation. So you'll have the ability to have 3 machines of Dragonfly, 3 machines of FreeBSD, 3 machines of OpenBSD and NetBSD to take the exam. So if you're a NetBSD person, we don't want to force you to take the exam on Dragonfly. If you're a NetBSD aficionado or a person who likes NetBSD, you should be able to take the exam on NetBSD. So you'll have the ability to do that by using 3 machines that we configure, just NetBSD machines, to take the exam. We're utilizing a customized PCBSD host. We've worked closely with Chris Moore, who's the PCBSD lead designer, and he's helped us set up a workstation that has the necessary requirements, including the virtualization and utilizing ZFS for some of the activities that we need to have the ability to roll back to a consistent version if needed. So there would be 10 or more. I guess in a configuration like this, you could have 24 or maybe up to 20 or so individual workstations. The only limitation really is on space and time and networking infrastructure within the exam location. The other boxes up here are a couple of other devices that'll be part of the exam environment. There's an exam file server that contains package repositories for individual packages for the 4 projects. So we'll have those packages available on a file server here, and if there's a requirement in the exam document that you install some software from a package, that package repository will be here. There are some requirements in the BSD Professional exam to interact with Windows devices. So we're going to have a Windows server as a real server to interact with for whatever those requirements are. And those requirements are in the BSD Professional exam, so you can read more about that. Scoring. The idea behind scoring is to have the scoring scripts on the exam file server, and then once the candidate is finished with their exam, we would run some scripts from the file server to log directly into each virtual machine and determine whether or not the task was correctly performed. Did you set up a service, whatever service we indicated in the exam? Did you set that service up, and is it working? Or did you copy some file, or did you whatever the task is supposed to be? So we'll have some scripts available to do some checking. We're probably going to indicate that those are provisional results. In other words, we can tell you what we think you scored, as a candidate right after the exam. But we do want to have our psychometrician be able to look at those results and make sure that it's a valid results. Here is a sample exam result. I just put some numbers in here. This is not a real person, and it certainly wasn't me for the exam. But we're using some tools to do some of the scoring. So this tool is the tool that gives us HTML output for some scoring mechanisms that we do. I think it's part of the Perl testing framework. There's a Perl module that does output for HTML. We're using that. In this scripting connectivity between here, we're using another Perl module to do the connection between the file server and running programs and so forth on the virtual machine. So we're using commonly available tools. There's no real special magic in any of this. It's all finding out if files exist, or if there are ports that are supposed to be open, if there are programs that are supposed to be run, or if there are other results that are part of the exam tasks, if those results exist. So in this particular example, these are the domains that were part of the exam, and these were the individual tasks in that domain for that particular task. Here's one for security. As you can see, there were four, looks like 4 tasks here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tasks, and only 1 task was completed successfully. So some report like this will be available in some form so that you can get a provisional result for your exam result. I actually have a demo of that, this whole concept available that we developed for the New York City BSDCon a couple of weeks ago in February. We have the exam right here. If you'd like to take a look at the results or what the workstation format would look like, and maybe try your hand at a couple of these simple questions and so forth, we can do that here, and you can see what the exam would look like in a sort of a demo form. We do have it. I do have the exam questions that we asked. They're not the real exam questions that were on the BSD exam, but there are 5 questions with this this demo, and you would do the same. You'd read the same materials that you would find on the exam, to perform the activities on the workstation. We do the scoring and get the results like you can see here. And then the nifty thing about ZFS is we just roll back and the next person can take the exam. So kudos to the ZFS team for rollbacks and all of that. Future directions, we're looking at a couple of directions for the next couple of things we want to do. Some new exams we're looking at under development. One would be a firewall exam for the BSD community. Not, you know, this firewall or that firewall or the next kind of firewall, but how do you protect a system using firewalls? And can you secure a virtual machine here from an attacking machine over here, given, you know, the lists of tasks that you're supposed to allow, the ports that you're supposed to allow, or network translation, or whatever it's going to be. We're looking to develop that exam here shortly. Another idea that's been considered is secure deployment. How do you actually secure BSD systems for production use? Kirk's talk was a great example of the capabilities that are now available in the BSD community for each of these, well, at least in the FreeBSD world. There are similar capabilities with some of the other BSDs, and we'll be looking to see if we can, if there's interest in developing an exam on secure deployment. If you have another idea about an exam type that might be, you think might be of interest to the wider community, let us know. We're a community project, so always glad to talk to anyone who has an interest in certification. That's the website. There's additional material on the exams themselves, and the exam objectives document are also available for download. I didn't put it in the slides, but there's also a website where we have some videos about how to use the materials that we have. We have a DVD that we sell that has some, it has a bootable ISO that has all 4 major projects on it, the most current versions of all 4 projects. So you can utilize that to study for the exam and do that. And the videos are it's also available on the website. Any questions? Yes, sir.
After someone takes the exam, you better just go back to
So if you're taking the exam, you would take the exam on it's a pre-configured workstation that we configure. When you're finished, we'll do the scoring on that. We'll probably also take a snapshot of that that complete system, save it off for further, posterity or analysis, or at least verification. And then that workstation may be used again by someone else. So we do a rollback, and there you go. You're able to take the next exam.
So you are considering saving?
Oh yes, oh yes. We don't want to get we don't want to let the results just disappear. Over here.
How often does your pool of questions change? It's a large pool of questions, but there are some dates. Presumably, like the dates, and your results will plummet because your candidates will more people are previous candidates.
Right. So the question is, how often does the pool of questions change? The pool of questions changes as we get time to change the questions. It's a complicated problem in that we have to have new input of questions that are current or within the current sphere of the exam objectives. We also have to update the exam objectives on a periodic basis. So we can't get ahead of the exam objectives. Like right now, for example, the exam objectives for the BSD Associate exam, the last major publication was in 2012. So we don't have exam objectives of anything that has been put into the BSD systems from that point forward. So we have to have questions within that time period, and we have to have the ability of the subject matter experts to review those questions, make sure that they're valid. Is it a valid question? Is the question written in such a way as that a non-English speaker would understand the question? No jargon, no special keywords or anything like that. And is the question too similar to another question that we have already in the pool? So, yes, we are taking the age of the questions into account. Another question? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. How many people have taken the exam? I think we've got about 250 exam attendees that have gone through the exam itself. We have now about over 1,000 people registered for the exam. And every time we have the exam in a location, like for example at this conference, we try to get those people notified that the exam is going to be available in that conference, the people in that local area, so that if they want to take the exam, they can do that. I think it's 250, 275, somewhere in that range. Yes, sir. Right. Question is how much change is there within the question pool? We have right now within the question pool over twice the number of questions that are actually over twice the number of questions that are on a form, and we have multiple forms. I can't really give you too many specifics, but. Right. Right. So the reason why there are extra questions on the exam is because we're testing certain questions for inclusion on future exams. So we want to know what we want to know with some of these questions, and we don't mark them which ones they are. We don't mark which of those are test questions for us. But we want to know, is that question too easy? Is it too hard? Are people misunderstanding the question too many times? One of the things that you have in the exam pack is a sheet of pink paper that you can write down your comments on the exam. If you think that question number 93 is inaccurate, or there's no possible answer, you should tell us that. And we analyze every one of those that comes back. Other questions? Okay, over here.
Okay, so I guess another similar test would be the Red Hat certification.
Yes.
And they also have two. They have like the Red Hat certified technician and certified
Right.
engineer. Would that correspond with your associate and professional levels?
Question is, Red Hat has two exams, the whatever the names are, the engineer and so forth. I've never taken their exams. What we tried to do is to focus on the BSD community in our area, and
let's not put it in context. But it's the idea that the associate exam establishes a certain level, and then the professional exam builds on top of that, and it says, oh, you know even more.
Yes, yes. There is the BSD Associate is for an entry-level system administrator who may have 6 to 8 months of, work experience, maybe more than that, with personal experience certainly. But you've had the ability to sit down and work with the system for several months, maybe under the guidance of a senior administrator, but certainly you're actually able to do those things. The BSD Professional is designed for someone who's got, a couple of years of dedicated system administrator experience, and you feel that you have the ability to stand alone as an administrator, as opposed to working under some guidance. However, there's no requirement to take the BSD Professional after the BSD Associate. You can take them in any order, or you can take the Professional if you want.
And then the other thing about the Red Hat exam is they always, when you get your certificate, it constantly says, oh, you took the Red Hat exam for Red Hat 9 or Red Hat 8 or for RGL5. Is there something similar on the BSD exam to say, okay, you took this maybe not for BSD 10 because it's for all the BSDs, but you took it in 2013 or whatever? Because, if your certification is 10 years old, it's probably not that useful.
So the question is there a certification period on the exam? Is there a date and so forth? And does the certification last for a certain period of time? We do put a date on the exam certificate. The actual text, I believe, reads something like. The exam should be, we consider the exam valid for 5 years. The date of the certification should be checked. If you're looking at it as an employer, you should check the date. The reason we want to do that, why we need to have a periodic update of an exam, is because we're looking to have our program accredited by the American National Standards Institute, or the partner organization, the International Standards Organization, ISO. There's a standard called Personnel Accreditation. It's ANSI 17024, and that standard accredits certification programs just like ours. So if you're a radiologist or a heart surgeon and you take the certification exam for heart surgeons, most likely that program, well, we would hope, that program is accredited by an organization such as ANSI or ISO, so that the certification method, the methodology used to determine that those people are certified is accurate and thorough. You don't want, mom and pop radiology clinic or heart surgery opening up next door, I'm sure. Yes, sir.
If a certificate expires, does one retake it, or is there a way to demonstrate participation that might suggest they are active and put their skills into Robert Watson?
Okay, so the question is, if the exam expires, do you have to retake the exam, or is there a continuing education credits? We do have a continuing education type activity. If you can read about this on the website. Essentially, what we look to do is to verify that you have continual use of BSD systems over that period of time, perhaps through employment or consulting or some other activity that you can demonstrate your continued involvement with BSD systems. I think we call them BSD recertification units, BRUs. So yes, there's a way to do that. Yes, sir.
Signed poster still floating around?
Is the signed poster still running? I don't know. I'll have to find out. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.